This is a mock interview conducted by ForumIAS Academy at New Delhi. The interview panel includes eminent academicians, retired bureaucrats, and other luminaries. The objective of the program is to acquaint the candidate with the format and expectations of the personality test conducted by UPSC.
Come, please.
Come in, ma'am. Good morning. Good morning, sir.
Come. Natasha, come. Please sit down.
Thank you.
How are you today, Natasha?
I'm good, ma'am. Thank you.
And are you working somewhere, Natasha?
No, ma'am.
No. And you're living in Punjab only?
Ma'am, Delhi currently.
You're living in Delhi. How come?
Ma'am, for exam preparation. So after my completing my PhD, I landed up in Delhi.
Okay. You did your PhD in what?
Ma'am, it was disaster governance.
Disaster governance. What is that?
Ma'am, basically it is looking at the policies in disaster management in India and looking at the loopholes and what all.
Wonderful. That's very, very topical and very, very interesting. So this, what is happening in Uttarakhand, what is that? What is that problem?
Ma'am, in Uttarakhand currently we are witnessing land subsidence in Joshimath area.
Not Joshimath. It's throughout.
Yes, ma'am. In other areas of Uttarakhand also.
You know the other areas also where it is?
Ma'am, in the tourist destinations, it is being witnessed. Not the other name of the other places, but across the hilly regions.
So, what are the three reasons why it's happening?
Ma'am, the first reason is because the heavy construction which is being undertaken in that area.
Construction of what kind of construction?
Ma'am, the thermal power plants, the road construction, the Char Dham project, for example. And ma'am, also it is said that the underground aquifer, it has been damaged. And ma'am, also because the area over which these habitations are there, it is on the former landslide debris.
It's a fault, yeah. So what is the solution that you would have for this? Say supposing you are the Chief Secretary of Uttarakhand. So what are three things you would do? The Chief Secretary is also from Punjab, by the way, Mr. Sandhu. So what would you do?
The most important would be to take in the expert recommendations when it comes to undertaking any developmental projects in such areas.
But they did have. But the experts, one set of experts said the right thing, one set of experts said what was expected. So they followed that. Experts give opinion that is asked for.
Ma'am, ensuring that whatever development projects we are undertaking, that is not beyond the carrying capacity of the land. So, for example, if it is a tourism sector, we should ensure that there is ecotourism rather than going in.
The pilgrim Char Dhams, why couldn't you do ecotourism? It's all Joshimath is the way to Badrinath. Karn Prayag is both Kedarnath, Badrinath, and they're taking railways over there. And then there's the other two Char. It's all religious. So today I'm talking to Natasha, who is well versed in disaster governance. So she's not going to do committees, etc. She knows the core issues. So Natasha is going to tell me specifically what she's going to do. Practically, you know the terrain, you know the constraints, you know why all that is happening. Natasha is not an outsider and is to appoint a committee. Natasha is a person who knows. Yes.
Ma'am, even though if we are undertaking such highway constructions, it should be not at the cost of the trees, the greenery which is there.
How do you do it? That's very theoretically said. When the road is being widened, their trees have to be cut. Do you know how they're doing it? Are you aware? Have you studied what's happening?
No, ma'am, I'll read on.
Okay. All right. Never mind. Is there any natural disaster that you... Let's talk about the tsunami that took place in 2004. So, what could have been done better to avoid the destruction that took place in Andamans and Chennai, etc.?
Ma'am, better early warning systems could have helped.
We didn't have early warning systems. Did we have? Did we not have?
Ma'am, that time...
It first hit Indonesia, right? So there was a lead time.
Ma'am, that time the disaster governance framework was not in place. The act and the structure institutions were not really in place at that time. when the tsunami took place in 2004. So that was one area where India could have done better. And ma'am, in terms of preparedness, community preparedness in the coastal areas, that was missing. The institutional gaps were there and also the non-institutional gaps.
So tell me one disaster that has been very well handled.
Ma'am, in Odisha, they have taken considerable steps for cyclone.
Which was the first one that came where they did all that? Which was the first cyclone where they prepared well? And what did they do there?
Ma'am, exact year I am not able to recall, but in terms of steps they have taken, first is the community preparedness, bringing in more awareness among the people, and also with respect to the construction. For example,
they relocated people first of all. Okay, all right. Now I saw in your biodata that very interesting, Election Commission of India, campus election ambassador, etc., etc. So what are your views on the electoral bonds? Are they a disaster? Are they not a fair level playing field? What are they? And why should they be done at all?
Ma'am, there are certain criteria that these bonds can be issued to only certain political parties which have secured a minimum threshold of votes in the last elections.
That's the problem with them? That's only certain parties, certain are excluded? What is the problem, if there is at all? Or it's a good idea?
Ma'am, also there is no transparency with respect to who has given the funds to the political parties. That still remains non-transparent. And also there are concerns raised that since the party in power, they can access the information about which parties.
So now, if you were the Election Commission, what would you do? Election Commission did go to the court against these bonds earlier, didn't they? So what happened in that case?
Ma'am, the bonds, they were allowed to be issued. Ma'am, they are issued by the SBI, which is the bank which is allowed to issue these bonds.
Okay, thank you.
Natasha, you have Masters in International Relations.
Yes.
2 days back we had budget. Can you tell me how much money budget put for Afghanistan?
So I'm not aware about it. I'll read.
Here the diplomatic question is that budget has put around 200 crore rupees for Afghanistan and Taliban have welcome. Question is that we don't recognize Taliban as a government. To whom we are giving money to in Afghanistan? Or are we recognizing that Taliban as a legitimate government? Would you explain from diplomatic viewpoint?
Sir, a recognition of legitimacy has not been given by India per se to the Taliban government. That is still not there.
Whom we are giving money then?
So it is for the humanitarian benefits to the population with respect to giving them humanitarian aid, medical aid and food aid. With respect to those benefits, Indian government is extending.
Operationally, is it possible to offer any aid to Afghani people without having minimum level of dialogue with Talibans?
So being a sovereign nation, dialogue with the government would be required. But even though we are giving the aid, that does not mean that we are recognizing the Taliban government as a legitimate government, because the transfer of power was by force. It was not through the negotiations. So, but at the same time, giving this humanitarian aid and funds is important so that India remains a player in the geopolitical scenario when it comes to Afghanistan.
Pakistan these days are dealing with IMF. Will you give us an idea what conditions IMF is putting before offering any loan to Pakistan?
Sir, I have to read on it, sir.
Okay. Give me, what is the last reported rate of retail inflation in our country?
So it was around 5.6% in the recent time. It was below a 6% threshold.
Recent economic survey has pointed out some major challenges that our economy is facing. Can you name any one challenge?
So the rising oil prices in the international market.
Prices are rising. Are you sure?
So it can be a challenge in the future if the oil prices continue to remain high, even though there was a recent cap which was imposed by the Western countries on the oil trade. Sir, also it is because of the recessionary pressures in the West, the exports have been declining, and if the recession further intensifies, our exports will reduce and it will widen the current account deficit. And also, sir, if the Fed rate increases, that will lead to flight of capital from the economies such as India.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Natasha, you're from Ludhiyana. Ludhiyana is famous for sports, being a sports city, right?
So that is Jalandhar.
That is Jalandhar. So if at all, let's consider Ludhiana is considered for being a capital for Punjab and Chandigarh is given to Haryana. Why do you think that Ludhiana can be a capital? Give me 2 reasons.
So first of all, Ludhiana is a city in the whole Punjab which is most densely populated. It is also has the largest municipal corporation across the state, and also sir, became industrial city. There is a rich industry of cycle parts industry and hosiery industry. It is also known as the Manchester of India. And sir, with the good developmental indicators, for example, more than 80% literacy rate, so Ludhiana can be a good contender.
Okay, so you are largely comfortable giving Chandigarh to Haryana.
So with respect to the capital, I think the current status quo is good enough, with the Chandigarh being a shared capital for both the states. So that is the stand I would take.
To what extent this can be continued? We have to come to a point after a few years or decades, let's say. So what can be done about it? There have been all party meetings, there have been negotiations between the states. What can be done now?
So Chandigarh can remain a shared capital because it provides a good forum for having dispute resolution between the two states, Punjab and Haryana, for various issues. For example, the river water sharing issue, and also with respect to other political issues which have been the conflict areas. So the current mechanism of being the shared capital can continue to remain, even for the deficit. Yes, sir.
Okay. So talking about Punjab, there have been a lot of issues between the present government and the governor. How do you weigh the office of governor? Like, should it be abolished altogether, or what can be done about it?
So the office of governor is very crucial for continued communication between the center and the states. So abolition of the office of governor is not a solution. We need a mediator in the federal setup, such as India. So we do need certain reforms with respect to the institution of governor. Implementing the recommendations of Sarkaria Commission and Poonchi Commission is something which can be undertaken to have more non-partisan participation when it comes to the governor.
Okay. You are from PSIR background.
Yes, sir.
So, like, imagine me being a 8th class student and explain me the difference between capitalism, socialism and communism.
So capitalism is when there is private ownership of the means of production.
8th class.
So capitalism is when this book is being produced by an individual. The purpose is profit, and the process of producing this book is privately owned. I own this and I am producing this book with the motive of profit. So socialism would be when this book is produced, but then the purpose is to have more redistribution so that the lower sections of the society, they can also benefit from the production process, from the benefits which are being accrued from this production of this particular book. And so communism is when the process of production, which is behind this production of this book, it is owned by the government, the central government, and the production is also regulated by the government according to what actually is the amount which is required in the society, and also everyone is getting according to the needs.
Is there a government in communism?
So there is centralized control of the means of production and the process of distribution.
but no government.
There is a central government, sir, which is strongly regulating the whole process.
Okay, is there a proper, perfect communist state all over the world, or have there ever been?
So currently there is no perfect communist state because even China, which proposes to be a communist model of governance, they also follow state communism. So there is no perfect communism currently in place. So after the USSR was formed in the initial years, there was a plan of 5-year plan which was proposed by under Lenin, and but even then it could not be continued for long, and there was new economic policy which was introduced.
Okay. Natasha, tell me to what extent you would agree that women continue to be a secondary sex even after 75 years of our independence?
So currently, even after more than 7 decades of independence, the economic activity of women that continues to be out of count when it comes to GDP. The care economy is still not taken into account when we are counting the GDP. Also, sir, mostly more than 80% women are still employed in the informal sector. There is less of provision in the formal sector for them. Gender roles continue to be...
My question was, to what extent you would agree that it is a secondary sex?
So women are not a secondary sex. They are at par with the men.
Who has given that idea?
So Simone de Beauvoir.
Okay, go ahead.
So they are not the secondary sex. They also have the equal rights and aspirations and also equal capabilities to perform in various sectors. So they are not really the secondary sex, sir.
Okay, my last question to you regarding, you are into meditation as well.
Yes, sir.
So how does it help you?
So meditation helps me to be more calm in any adverse situation and to have more clarity of mind because even though whatever challenges in personal and professional life I face, at the end of the day when I sit for those 20 minutes, it helps me to clear my mind and take better decisions.
So is it always beneficial to all?
So meditation is something very natural to a human aspect because it is ultimately sitting with oneself. So I think it is beneficial for all if they do practice it. Whatever means they can adopt, but yes, meditation does help, sir.
Okay, thank you. I'll move on. Yes.
So Natasha, can you define role's original position for me?
Sir, original position is when the heads of the household, they are under the strict veil of ignorance and they come together to deliberate on issues of justice and reach a conclusion after deliberation.
How can we assume that they will be neutral, impartial?
Because they are under thick veil of ignorance, they are not aware about their individual advantages and the disadvantages.
Okay, but how can one be ignorant about his or her sex? I think the veil of ignorance fails there. I may be ignorant about my social position, but what about sex?
So in Rawls' conception, only the heads of the household they participate. So women are not taken into account for the negotiation
Is
purpose.
it so?
Yes, sir. That is.
Okay, define soft power for me.
So soft power is an aspect when the other country, they can be co-opted into getting along rather than being coerced.
So it's a power of attraction basically. What is more important, hard power or soft power, frankly?
So both are crucial.
Would you say China has soft power?
To some extent, yes, sir.
For example?
So their Confucius thought, they have good institutes across the world to have those Confucius thoughts.
Okay. What is the strategic importance of Egypt for India?
So Egypt's location is very geostrategic. It is near the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. So across that we have good oil trade which is coming to India from the Western countries. And also, sir, Egypt forms a very important link between Africa and the Middle East. So it is important from the geostrategic perspective.
Okay. What do you understand from climate justice?
So it is about, first of all, common but differentiated responsibilities. Historically responsible powers are the ones which need to fund the adaptation measures in the present time, and also to have more of emission cuts upon them. And also, sir, the loss and damage, the vulnerable countries which are facing these brunt, they should be financed adequately.
Do you think India has any moral responsibility to cut the emissions?
Yes, sir. We do have moral responsibility in the sense that we are the third largest emitter across the world. So there does come moral responsibility upon India as well.
There are so many people with low carbon footprints in India. We haven't even started to develop yet, and they want to cut the emissions. How will we develop? A carbon footprint of a 50, 60-year-old man in India would be equivalent to carbon footprint of a 10-year boy in United States of America. So why should we cut emissions? We should grow. Coal is cheaper.
Sir, India also proposes to be a leader of Global South. So it does become a moral imperative upon India as well to go in for these cuts, to have a good legitimacy when it comes to.
Okay, my last question to you, and very briefly tell me, what is the problem with Myanmar? Democracy seems to having a difficult day there. Can't settle its roots. What is the problem according to you?
Sir, it has been the recent coup by the military junta, even after there was a democratic, small phase of democratic
That is
movement.
what has happened, but why?
Sir, historically it has been a stronghold of the military government. So that continues.
Any other reason that comes to your mind?
So I'll read on it, sir.
Okay, no problem. Thank you, Natasha. That's all from my side.